To mark the score, I first printed it and put it in a binder so that I could quickly turn the pages and make it easier for me to reference while conducting. As Battisti recommends, I used all red felt tip marker to make my markings on the score so that they stand out from the black ink and are easy to read. So I first made the tempo marking bigger, as well as making the time signatures bigger so that I could quickly reference them through additional symbols so that I could make a quick note of which meter to conduct as it changes throughout the piece. I called attention to various entrances that I would like to cue and keep in mind throughout the piece. So the bassoon opening is obviously very important as it presents the first theme, as Doherty calls the alligator theme. As new entrances are introduced, I made sure to mark the different instruments that are playing, making note of the different stylistic decisions that Doherty recommends, as well as the changing dynamic levels, making note of the changing time signatures, as well as cues that would be important to convey. I call attention to different intervals that will be tricky to tune, so making sure that octaves are notated as Battisti recommends by drawing an arrow and a bracket. Bringing attention to the cue of the whip is very important, as that again evokes the sound of the alligator that that Doherty is trying to present. I call attention to the rehearsal numbers to make sure that they are obvious. So if I was ever rehearsing this with an ensemble, I could quickly make note of where to begin. I wanted to remind myself to make sure to cue and call attention to the trumpet and horn entrance on the next page, since this introduces the second theme, which Doherty calls the hunter's theme. As one of these distinct chords, I wanted to make sure that I indicated which parts are playing the same note and what notes they're playing are represented in the chord so that I could quickly tune them and make sure to know if everyone is playing the right part by ear. I also call attention to different entrances, as well as showing when to breathe and when to carry the melody. I wanted to make sure that I indicated through symbols and bigger markings the changing meters, calling attention to various parts that may be tricky to remember to cue or should definitely be made more important. Go. I marked that this is the re-entrance of the alligator theme, calling attention to different entrances, the changing time signatures, marking and phrasing. I also wanted to make sure that I made note of quick and important dynamic changes, as well as changing all text suggestions into pictures and symbols, so making the crescendo not the words, but the actual symbol. Again, on the sustained or more present chords with full texture, I wanted to mark what parts of the chord that were present. As Battisti recommends for tempo changes, he suggests putting the original tempo that was being played with in this case, a dashed line upward to represent the accelerando, marking in that they have 3 measures to increase the tempo to the quarter note equals 148. I also have the dynamic changes marked, the tempo changes marked, and again, one of the chords laid out in the specific notes represented in each part. Again, calling attention to different entrances, dynamic markings, phrase markings, where to breathe, where to carry over the melody. tricky entrances still marked. The different ways to play the instruments are marked. So in a rehearsal setting, if I had any questions from the ensemble as to where breathing is recommended versus where the melody should carry over, I will have a quick frame of reference to answer their question and work with the ensemble if that may not be convenient for them. So I wanted to make sure that I had a reminder to cue in the percussion 2 entrance, since this part is a quick, sudden change in color and timbre, with all of the voices dropping out except for this percussion 2 solo. And then I wanted to call attention to the changing dynamic levels with the crescendo into the fortissimo and then subito piano. So I have that marked, as well as the different notes in the chord. Again, the tempo marking at the top is being changed, so I use that with the dotted line going down to show that we have one measure for this ritardando from the original tempo into the new tempo. So again, I have all of the time signatures marked, the dynamic level made big. In this part, it's conducted in 4, but the subdivision of each beat, the first beat gets 3 beats, 3 subdivisions, the second beat is in 3 again, and then beats 3 and 4 are in subdivision groupings of 2, so that's marked with the symbols of 2 triangles and 2 lines. All of the time signature, time meter changes are marked. And then sustained chords, I have marked the different numbers in the chords. Again, calling attention to when Doherty introduces the alligator theme again to make sure that this is heard from the audience. I wanted to call attention to the whip in the percussion 1 part to make sure that that is heard and played on time, since it's so important in representing the alligator motif. And finally, marking the powerful fortissimo dynamic level, the 6/8 time. And on this final B major triad, I wanted to make sure that all of the notes are marked as to what is the part of the chord to make sure that I can quickly tune it in a rehearsal setting and make sure that this is a powerful ending to this great piece.